Good morning, everybody. Come as you are. And that applies to all of us. But if you're a visitor here this morning or relatively new to the church, that's our encouragement that don't feel you have to do anything you don't want to, sing, stand up, sit down, whatever. And feel free to literally, as we were singing, come as you are. The sad notice to start with, and some of you might not have heard, my guess is that many of you will, the Big Church Festival, which is the big event which has been going for many years, used to be the Big Church Day Out, just near Stenning. And yeah, yesterday many of us heard about the death of a young man there and injury of others. And he's actually, and I've tried to check all this. I'm pretty sure this is on in some of the more reputable outlets and so on. But it sounds like it was a young minister from Eastbourne, and yeah, his name is Robert Guanco, and as I understand it, has a young family, has a daughter, and married. So I can't even imagine what they're going through as a family and their church is going through. Also, we have long-standing friendship with many of those who run the Big Church Day Out and brought it all together, and they're still friends, and I've messaged them on behalf of the church to say that we are very much praying for them and sending them our love as well. Devastating all round, and I know it's devastating all round, so let's keep them in our prayers and our love. I did notice, actually, one of the other things I noticed is that for Robert, the pastor who died, I think they've started a GoFundMe. So keep your eyes open for that if you would like to support. I can imagine any support now and over the years ahead would be amazing. We continue our series this morning based on the Odyssey, the ancient story of the Odyssey, the long way home. And it doesn't matter if you weren't here for the last sermon on this and the last introduction, it all overlaps. And we're going to have a little overview of part of the Odyssey story this morning as well. And one of the books I'll be referring to, and it won't surprise many of you because I often refer to the Franciscan monk Richard Rohr. And I have many people who have influenced me over the years, and at the moment I would say he is the theologian that, amazing. And Richard Rohr spent much of his life exploring how faith changes and develops and deepens over the years. And in this book, Falling Upwards, A Spirituality for the Two Halves of Life, and I've loved it for a long time. Encouraged our leadership team are all reading that or listening to it on Audible at the moment. And within the book, he talks about two stages of life, a little bit like Brian McLaren's 4 stages of faith. Some of you might be aware of that. But for Richard Rohr, it's 2 stages to the spiritual journey. The first is largely about building our life, establishing identity, to some extent personality, finding security in many different ways, how we belong, different ways we try to belong, perhaps, work, if we decide what work to do and explore and study, how our beliefs kind of start lining up or not. So he talks about this as building a container in the first half of life. But there is another journey, and to be true, not many people, he says this, not many people, not everybody knows about the second half of life journey. I would say once we do, it's so exciting. It's so exciting. The second half is less about building and proving ourselves and more about discovering what actually can go in the container. First half, building the container, going deeper, becoming more comfortable with things like mystery, letting go of some of our certainties that we became very certain of perhaps in the first half of life, discovering more fully who we are in God. And it's not about age. You'd think, you get to a certain age and then, you enter the second. It's not about age. You can be relatively young and already begin the second half of life. Sometimes because life or suffering has been in your life. And this is the challenging bit. We're always often challenging in love in this church. You can be much older and never make the transition to the second half of life. It's not about age. Richard Rohr loves the church. Says really tough things because he loves the church. He says most of us remain with the concerns of the first half of life, but there is more. There's a beautiful connection, I think, with the Odyssey series that we're doing this morning. Perhaps without knowing it, Homer, isn't this amazing? Humanity, and I would say divinity, how they work together. Homer was describing something, I think, remarkably similar in the Odyssey. Odysseus makes the great journey outwards towards Troy. He's away from home for 10 years in Troy. But then he makes another journey back home, another 10 years, the long journey home. And some of us would read the Odyssey and say, wow, that's his real inner journey. You can see how he was putting the container together on the first 10 years. But the person who eventually returns home is not quite the person who left. So if some of the ideas that we touch upon this morning catch your imagination, I would highly recommend, going to recommend that one later, Richard Rohr's Falling Upwards. I would highly recommend that one. Going to look at the screen now, and there should be some words from Psalm 57 on there. And if you'd like to, invite us to say this together. Have a seat, unless your name's Ant, and I'm going to invite you forward at this stage, Ant. Can we show Ant our encouragement as he comes forward? The long walk to the front. A step in faith in itself might be a bit low. Going to chat, and Ant's one of our trustees here, and amongst many other things, has been here many years and helps with the sound, and but a personal friend, and a friend of the church, and he's agreed to come forward this morning and me ask him a few things about this 12-step program. And it will all overlap, I think, with where we're going later on in the service. And when did you first become aware of the 12-step program?
About 10 years ago. Yeah, that answers that. That's short, quick, stumped.
That'll do. That'll do. And do you want to say a little bit about how and when you experienced it then, what it was like, what you thought of it, what your preconceptions were about it, and what you discovered about it?
Would have been helpful to be listening to what you're saying. I drifted off into my own head, which is I quite often do that. But I excuse me. Yeah, in fact, one of my friends took me to a meeting. Before 10 years ago, and I judged it actually because they mention finding a power greater than yourself. God. And I'd been brought up in church, so I kind of dismissed it out of, what's the word, arrogance. Because, I kind of thought that I knew, a sort of old thinking for me, I think, that I knew God, and if they're talking about finding a power greater than yourselves, then there's only, as far as I was concerned, then there's only one, and it's God, and I know him, and if you don't know him in the room, then basically you're just doing it on your own willpower. So I just dismissed it and thought, well, I don't need any of this. I'll carry on my own.
What took you back? Why did you go back? And I know your thoughts about it changed. Why did your thoughts about the 12 steps change over the months or the years?
I didn't really have an option. It was part of it was part of the treatment centre stuff that I had to go to 12-step meetings. So I kind of understood it a little bit more because I was sort of forced into going. And at that particular point, I'd have probably done anything that you suggested if it was going to be of help.
I hadn't even thought about this. It reminds me of preconceptions about things, how we can judge things and get it so wrong. Because as somebody who worked with substance misuse and offenders for many years and in prisons, I used to have a very low opinion of 12 steps, but it was out of ignorance. And I'd seen some of the things a few things, and people going along, and then, not always with good results, I guess. So But over the years, and partly through Ant, and partly through this church, exploring the 12 steps, I just realised that was my ignorance and how amazing the programme is. What would you say the strengths of the programme are?
It got me to understand something that I'd struggled with for a long time. Feeling quite thoughtful this morning, in as much as, I guess I didn't realise that I had problems with everything, and that even 12-step recovery for everything, I didn't really know it existed. I kind of had, I suppose, a preconceived idea of like an alcoholic or a drug addict or someone, sitting on stereotypical, some homeless guy sitting on a bench in a park drinking out of a brown paper bag. And I wasn't that. Excuse me. So I guess I didn't know it existed at all. And I tried to sort everything out on my own, I guess, and didn't realise that, I didn't have any understanding of addiction or anything like that.
From what I understand about the 12 steps, humility is part of it, part of the journey. So it's always a difficult question asking this, but how has it, and for our sakes, not, I know you're not somebody who likes to big yourself up and all that, but for our sakes, how has it helped you, this is my word, grow over the years, do you think?
Well, it's really just helped me. I mean, we talked a little bit before, actually. I mean, it realised that I tried I've always tried to cover up my thinking, which is the reason you might go to a 12-step program they say, you go to AA for your drinking, but you stay for your thinking. And I realised that my head and my thoughts are generally the issue, and I try to run away from that, cover that up, and ignore how I feel, basically. That's how I've been doing. Similar to I guess not maybe relevant, but similar to this morning, feeling uncomfortable about speaking. Not nervous about being at the front and speaking, but more about kind of thinking about what other people think of me. And I think I've always worried about that. Not people pleasing necessarily, but always worried more about what people think about me than is actually relevant to my life. So, like thinking, my head goes, well, you've sat at the front 2 or 3 times, not bleating on about this, but being asked to speak, and I'm responding and doing service for what you've asked me because it's relevant to you. So I just say yes, and then I think about what everyone else thinks about me, and go. Some people are going, oh, not this again. None of it's relevant necessarily. I'm just thinking about what you're thinking, and it's, you might not be thinking that, but that's what I'm thinking, and then that affects how my head works, and I go, oh, I'm not even concentrating on what you're saying. I'm just thinking about whatever everyone else, and there's quite a lot of noise. So generally, that's would have been my experience, I guess, of life. I don't know this as a child or when I'm growing up that this is just my head. This is the only one I've got.
So when you came up here at the beginning, you said, I'm in quite a reflective place. I'm thinking through things, and what you've just said. Not everybody would be able to say that, because that's being very open about what's going on inside. Is that something that's changed, that you are more able to recognise what's going on up here and here, and also when you feel you want to not keep that in, but to share that with other people as you want to?
Yeah, well, that's I guess in 12-step fellowships in the rooms I've met people whose heads works in the same way as me. So that's the thing that I was always alone with that thinking until I met people who thought exactly the same way as me. So that was the biggest relief, I think. But yeah, for those feelings that I understand. I don't cover those feelings up anymore, be it with whatever. I mean, I might feel uncomfortable and eat 6 packets of crisps and loads of chocolate. I can still have feelings and treat them with tea cakes, Tunnocks tea cakes, crisps, Haribo, whatever. But I guess I can understand this morning that I'm feeling these ways, and then because of experiences in other fellowships and things, I can go, well, is this my stuff or is this your stuff? And this isn't. I'm just responding. What you think of me. This is really difficult for me. But what you think of me is none of my business. And it's you're allowed to think whatever you like about me, and I don't need to try and control that.
Again, my word. I don't know if it's your word, but freeing, is that freeing?
It's really difficult, but freeing, I guess. Yeah, and understanding how rather than covering every feeling I have up with whatever I choose to cover it up, now I understand that I can't do that because it doesn't lead to good places. So I'm just left with me as I am and my head. So I can only treat that with 12-step fellowships and, a power greater than myself.
And I know we've touched on it a bit, but in terms of 12 steps and not downplaying, addiction, addictive personality, or whatever phrase somebody might use, but knowing that we all can learn from the 12-step programs, what would you say, what comes to mind, what could everybody learn from the 12 steps, do you think? Just a couple of things.
I guess I can only speak for myself. It's given me an understanding of how I behave, and how my head works, and I get to share how, my thinking. I laugh and say that I don't go into my head on my own. I normally take people with me, because it's not a safe place to go. There's part of my head which isn't very kind to me, But I think, everyone would be able to benefit because it gives you some tools to deal with life as life happens to you. You can't steer away from things which are bad or things which you hadn't planned to happen. It's just, you get to share life with other people and run it by them really, and talk about it and understand it a bit more and realise where, you have character defects or things where you might not respond very well, and understanding whether your behaviour is acceptable or whether you've done things wrong, and how to go about rectifying that and making amends and generally being maybe a nicer person or a healthier person, maybe. That's a better way of putting it.
Anything else you'd like to add? And no rush with this one either. I mean, in as much as I'm comfortable to sit in silence here and think a little bit, I'm generally, it gives, this is, it's kind of life-saving for everyone, because it's, or for me, that I get to understand myself and get to learn to love myself better. And to appreciate that it's given me access to loads of other things that I wouldn't normally have had. Therapy and a partner who's brilliant, as opposite to me as you could probably get, and has helped. We have continued to grow together massively, and that's given me insight to, just trying to understand life a bit more, I guess, one day at a time. Yeah, without too much pressure. I guess that's about it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. I will call upon your name, and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. I am yours, you are mine.
Please have a seat. And I'm going to invite Caroline to come forward, and we're going to have another little overview of the Odyssey story.
The Odyssey is one of the oldest surviving works of Western literature, composed in ancient Greece, probably around the late 8th century BC, and traditionally attributed to Homer, although exactly who Homer was and whether the poem was the work of one person remains debated. It grew out of a much older tradition of oral poetry, stories performed and passed on across generations before reaching the form we know. Perhaps that's the reason why it has endured. The Odyssey has become an archetypal story, leaving home, becoming lost, facing temptation and distraction, struggling with ourselves and somehow trying to find our way home again. Last week, the focus was on leaving home. This week, the journey continues, and Odysseus discovers that leaving home is one thing, finding the way home is quite another. Again and again, Odysseus and his companions become lost, delayed, or distracted. On the island of the Lotus Eaters, some of the men eat the lotus. Its effect is extraordinary. They lose the desire to return home. They don't consciously reject Ithaca or decide upon another destination. They simply forget the home they were traveling towards and become content to stay where they are. There are other distractions and temptations along the way. Odysseus is detained for years by the goddess Calypso. His men are warned not to kill and eat the cattle of the sun god, but eventually give in with disastrous consequences. Again and again, something interrupts their journey home. But some of the obstacles aren't simply out there. They are patterns within Odysseus himself. His extraordinary cunning repeatedly saves him. Trapped by the Cyclops, he famously gives his name as Nobody. So when the blinded Cyclops cried out that nobody was attacking him, no one comes to help. It's brilliant. But once Odysseus has safely escaping, his pride takes over. He can't resist shouting back his real identity. The cleverness that helped save him is followed by the need to say, in effect, "It was me, Odysseus." and that has consequences. Even his desire to return home may be more complicated than it first appears. Odysseus knows the sirens are dangerous, yet he desperately wants to hear them. He has himself tied to the mast so that one part of him can experience what another part of him knows it must resist. Perhaps that's the ancient picture of something very human. We can want to go home and at the same time want things that take us somewhere else. And perhaps, as the journey unfolds, Odysseus begins to encounter his own patterns more clearly. His cunning, pride, curiosity, and self-reliance have all helped to shape the journey, sometimes helping him, sometimes making the journey considerably harder. Eventually, he is at sea on a raft he has constructed himself. Resourceful as ever, Odysseus has built his own way forward. But when the raft is overwhelmed, there comes a point when he has to recognize the limits of his own resources, relinquish what he has been clinging to, and become willing to accept help beyond himself, a greater power. That doesn't mean doing nothing. He still has to swim. But perhaps there's a difference between doing what we can and believing everything depends on our own ability to get ourselves home. So the Odyssey isn't simply a story about somebody geographically lost. It can also be read as a story about forgetting home, becoming distracted from home, discovering the patterns that keep getting in our way, and perhaps, gradually, becoming more awake to ourselves and to the journey we're actually making.
Let's have a moment of prayer, and it's going to be more silence and between you and God, between me and God, not praying out loud, but let's pause and see where you want to go. If you want to pray, if not, meditate or reflect on whatever you want to. But Lord, in this time, help us reflect on our own journeys individually in life, where we've come from and where we're at. By your Spirit as well in this silence, remind us that you have been with us every step of the way, that you're with us now, and that you'll never leave us. Again, in the silence, there's an opportunity, if you'd like to offer the whole of who you are, the whole of your past, your present and your future, your strengths and weaknesses, your hopes and your fears, over to God as your offering this morning. We thank you, Lord, that you can and are intimately concerned with each of us, with us together, and that you're intimately concerned with the family that suffered loss at the Big Church Festival, an injury, and the organisers. Thank you that you are so big, for want of a better word, that you can also be with each individual and each family and each community in Nepal. Be their comforter and encourager. And may in any area that's suffering, any area of conflict in this complicated world at the moment, may your Spirit work within individuals and communities to bring out the best in us, to be part of the solution rather than the problem, or more part of the solution than part of the problem. as your kingdom grows in us, may your kingdom grow through us in love. Amen. I'm going to invite Mark to come forward now, and a familiar reading for some, and it may be new to others. And we're looking at Mark chapter 8 from verse 22.
They came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. When he had spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked, "Do you see anything?" He looked up and said, "I see people. They look like trees walking around." Once more Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were opened, his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly.
How's your sight this morning? Like honesty in this church. Richard Rohr describes a deep homesickness within each of us. I was trying to think of the times where I've been homesick, and it's not many times in life. I think when I was about 10 and I went on a riding holiday, very fortunate, and I really missed my mum and I felt really homesick. Then I didn't want to go home, but that's another matter. But homesickness can be, really powerful, can't it? And I bet memories are coming back for some of you. But this homesickness is a different type of homesickness, a longing that beckons us beyond the identities that we've constructed in life. Bear with me. The images that we construct, the masks that we put on. Such a beauty when somebody comes to the front and at other times as well, and takes a mask off or is not putting a mask on. That kind of beauty and freedom of honesty. But we all develop these false personas, our personalities. And it's different to who we really are in God. Coming home to God sounds very grand, but I think this is what life is all about, is also coming home to our deepest, truest, who we are. And I think, I could be wrong, but I believe this deeply as well, that we feel a homesickness in life without even realizing what we're homesick for. It could be an ache, it could be a restlessness, it could be that gap. It could be a sense that something isn't quite right, that there's more to us. Do you think there's more to you, or do you think what you understand of yourself and who you are, that's all there is? Can I encourage you, there's so much more to you. And an ache and a sensation and a sense that there might be more to life. And this really resonates, this homesickness, with our Long Home Way series. Last week we looked at leaving home, how many of us might resist leaving home in many different ways, either literally or moving to the unfamiliar. But also how we can't actually all hide from having to leave home in some sense, because sometimes life just comes through our front door as well. Today we look at part 2, asleep to being away from home. What do I mean by that? Asleep to being away from home. So we can all be away from home without realizing. Again, not literally home, not a building, but disconnected from our deeper self and disconnected from the life I believe God calls us towards. And we can, in a very powerful way, all of us, it's a condition, be sleepwalking through life. Sensing that something's missing, but sometimes being so familiar with the sense of homesickness that we stop sensing that something's missing. So we develop, as best we can, because we're trying to navigate complicated lives, but we develop these personas, these patterns, and the ways of coping as best we can. They will have helped us once. Probably, to some extent, maybe to a large extent. But the trouble is, I think we mistake these strategies that we've developed for who we are, for our true self. Richard Rohr, again, remember, he loves the church. He loves church. That's why he speaks and lives for the church and speaks in to become healthier. Sadly, he says, rather than religion and church freeing us from this, waking us up from the slumber, guiding us home to who we are, church often reinforces this constructed self, teaching us to play the game. We sing and we talk about being free in Christ, but often church has taught us to play the game rather than helping us travel home towards our deeper, truer self in God. Awakening, again, whatever language we use, means beginning to see this more clearly. But like the blind man in Bethsaida and the disciples, just before this healing, Jesus was talking to the disciples about blindness, not having eyes to see, or having eyes to see, so why aren't you seeing? Not having ears to hear, you've got ears, why aren't you hearing? Their slow understanding of who he was and who they were in Christ. We don't move instantly from blindness to perfect sight. As we encounter Jesus, I believe we gradually learn to see more clearly if, and there is a big if we're open. Not everybody embraces this journey. Not everybody does. Not everybody, dare I say, not many people know about this journey. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why Jesus calls it the narrow way. Psychiatrist Scott Peck calls it the road less traveled, almost as though it's a secret, but it's not. It's the heart of the Gospels. Firstly, being asleep. Fascinating part of the Odyssey. Odysseus' men, when the ship leaves Troy after the invasion of Troy, they get lost on their way home. They get blown off course, and not near Turkey, not near Greece. They end up, some people think, near North Africa. And they come to the lotus eaters, and they start eating the lotuses, apart from Odysseus. It has an effect on them, like a soporific thing, like a forgetful thing. They aren't consciously then rejecting Ithaca, their home. They simply lose the desire to go home. And they don't know they're lost. Perhaps that's one way of understanding our human condition. And we are literally, pardon the pun, just came to mind, we are all in the boat together. There's nobody different in this. We go through life unaware of what's driving us, blinding us, or dulling us to our God-given instincts. We're blown off course, every single one of us, to some extent, unaware that life could be different, that we can find what Jesus calls life in its fullness. The Bible uses lots of this language. Paul, in his letter to the Romans and the Ephesians, says, wake up from your sleep. Wake up. Wake up from your sleep. Mark, in this reading, just beforehand, Jesus is saying to the disciples, having eyes to hear, see and ears to hear, why don't you see and hear? These personas, these patterns that we all develop, these strategies that we develop for negotiating life, they vary so much. It can be, if I'm clever, if I'm liked, if I'm needed, if I'm successful, if I'm strong, if I'm independent or in control, I'll be okay. I'll be okay. And these things aren't necessarily bad. Again, some of these ways served us well as we were growing up, children, teenagers, young adults. But the constructed self, and that's what it is, that helped us once navigate life, isn't our deepest identity, our truest self, our home in God. Instead, and this is the challenge, or is it the exciting bit? Is this the good news? It's part of what keeps us lost. Good, because it's not the end of the story. Richard Rohr, in Breathing Underwater, talking about the 12 steps, and again, not downplaying the seriousness of addiction, but saying that in many ways, we are all kidding ourselves, have this stinking thinking, get into habits, and we can all learn from the 12 steps. He uses this to illuminate something about the wider human condition. He says we can all benefit from asking things like, and maybe ask yourself this morning this if you want to, what do I repeatedly do? What do I repeatedly work for or strive for or just reach for to make me feel okay? Approval, control, achievement being needed, certainty, work, comfort, being right, reputation, food, drink, or some kind of substance, and so on. Perhaps some of our patterns are ways of numbing our homesickness. I think they are, rather than listening to what they might be telling us and what the homesickness might be telling us. Discomfort, familiar response, temporary relief. Repeat. Secondly, awakening. What's this awakening about? Jesus touches the blind man and asks, "Can you see anything?" The man can see, but people are walking around looking like trees. His eyes are open, but he doesn't see very clearly yet. So Jesus touches him again. I think that is a lovely parallel, an image of our spiritual awakening. It doesn't happen just once at an altar call or whatever. Suddenly see everything and eyes are open totally for the rest of our lives. The spiritual life is a continuing willingness to have our eyes opened. It's a process. We begin noticing things, perhaps only a little at first. Wonder why I do that. I wonder if it's because of that. I'm in that pattern again. I've fallen down that hole again. I've got into that funny relationship with a person once again. Is that how I respond when I'm frightened? Is that me reaching for approval, that subtle thing I do? Is it actually about me trying to get a stroke all the time? Is control a big issue for me? Or independence? Again and again and again. Why does it keep coming up in my life? And then we discover there's even more to see. Once we start seeing, we discover there's even more to see if we have eyes to see. The freedom of awareness means it gives us choice. If we're asleep to our patterns, we get trigger habitual response. That can be for the rest of our lives. As we awaken, trigger recognition, possibility, maybe a different response. We can't choose differently from a pattern we can't see. But life is tough, isn't it? Even partially seeing answers, it's still blooming tough. Seeing doesn't mean everything immediately changes. Paul, in this bit of honesty, a bit of ant-like honesty from this morning, says, I do what I don't want to do. I know what I want to do, but I end up doing that which I don't want to do. I can see the pattern, but I still repeat it. You and I, everybody can genuinely want contradictory things. Freedom and familiarity. Intimacy and protection. Help and independence. Freedom and codependency. Change and things staying exactly how they are. It's what's called ambivalence. I love this word, ambivalence. Again, working with people with substance abuse, working with offenders. This eye-opening thing called the cycle of change. We start, if we're trying to give up smoking or trying to reduce being a gossip or trying to reduce eating or drink or drugs or whatever, we start in pre-contemplation. We're not really thinking about it, we're just doing it. We're asleep. Some people move to contemplation when they start to think about it and their eyes start to open up a little bit. Then there's decision time for some. I'm going to do something about it. Then action. I'm going to do this. Then maintenance. I'm going to keep doing this so I don't relapse. But then often relapse comes. And it's called a cycle of change because we can go round and round again. Ambivalence comes when we're contemplating change. We've begun to see something that needs to change, but that can be uncomfortable. Do you get that uncomfortable feeling when you're contemplating this kind of thing? If you ever do, part of us wants to change while the other part wants to remain attached to what's familiar. I think the scene in the Odyssey that captures this so well is the sirens beckoning with beautiful voices, the ship, Odysseus, and the crew to the rocks for disaster. Odysseus longs to get home, but what they expose in him is something more complicated. Not every part of him necessarily wants to rush home. He can get distracted. He knows their pull is powerful, so he doesn't simply trust himself. He gets himself tied to the mast, and he gets all the crew to fill their ears with wax. That's wisdom as well. Recognizing vulnerability may mean putting boundaries in our lives. Things that are pulling us back to old patterns if we want to be free from them. And yes, someone in recovery from alcohol, avoiding drinking environments. On another level, me using Facebook and reading people's comments and it not being very healthy and it being tempting to write some comments back. Stop using Facebook. That was freeing for me. Whoa, boundaries. Perhaps that's one way of hearing Jesus' deliberately provocative words when he says, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Don't read the Bible literally in that sense. If your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Change is rarely see, totally, decide, sorted. It's more often see, perhaps, struggle, repeat, notice, choose again, gradually see more clearly. Awareness even, seeing isn't necessarily change. But without awareness, I don't think we can change. Thirdly and finally, seeing more clearly. Jesus touches the blind man again. It's a process. Spiritual journey is a process for you and for me. Again, the 12 steps doesn't say, this is easy. I woke up once, all sorted. It involves continual honesty, awareness, recognizing patterns, accepting help, again, something Ant was touching upon. Ongoing practice, learning from mistakes, and not above all, but centrally, humility. I can't do this on my own. For Odysseus, I'm really getting into this Odyssey thing. Even our strengths can become unhelpful patterns. How challenging is that? Even our strengths. His cunning and cleverness repeatedly help him. But it comes with pride and self-reliance. His strengths become a problem. What happens when our strengths, your strengths, we've all got them, become our answer to everything? The clever person thinks harder, sometimes gets stuck in their head. The controller controls even more. Oh, I'm getting quite clever at this. I'm controlling that person, these people, this church. The helper helps more. Oh, I'm good at helping. The charmer flatters. Oh, they fell for that. Therefore, the strong person becomes stronger. The independent person becomes increasingly self-reliant. For the lotus eaters, they forget home. For Odysseus, he knows where home is and wants to get there, but he can't in his own resources. This is his second part of life learning. He tries to construct another solution, a raft. But even then, he reaches the limits of that solution. It's not taking him home. He has to come off the raft and swim, but also let the tide, something bigger than him, take him home. Transformation, lest you've heard this so many times in life, doesn't begin with, I'll try harder, I'll try harder. It sometimes begins with simply seeing more truthfully, oh, this isn't working. And that can be the start of us being open to receiving help, relinquishing some of our control and trusting beyond our own resources. It's not being passive. I can't say that word. It's not being passive. He still has to swim. But it's not all down to him. As people who go to NA and AA and all the different 12-step programs recognize. For you and me, and some of that will be relevant for some of us in this room, but maybe it's something about the following. Maybe it's attending church services, sometimes, often. Choice. Maybe it's praying. Maybe it's contemplative practices. Maybe it's therapy. Maybe it's spiritual direction. Maybe it's becoming more open generally. Maybe it's choosing vulnerability with other people. Our surrender in this, we don't have to jump off the raft. Our surrender isn't giving up on the journey. It's giving up on the illusion that I can make the journey entirely under my own power. Awakening goes beyond simply becoming more self-aware. It leads on to, I need help. I will receive help. I'll learn to. I can trust other people. I'll learn to. I can trust God. I'll learn to. Let me draw this together. Because seeing might mean admitting something isn't working. If your reaction to all of this morning, and part of mine will be as well, is, no, maybe, but no, not for me. Recognizing a pattern we've repeated for years, discovering something about ourselves that we've kind of like turned an eye to. Looking at something that we've always seen as a strength but in a different light, something we've been proud of perhaps. Recognizing that some of these things are what we're hiding behind. Acknowledging that the problem isn't always somebody else, even though it makes us feel a little bit better. Maybe that's our addiction. Facing grief, facing fear, facing vulnerability that we've learned to avoid. Done quite well at avoiding. Admitting that something we've reached for to feel okay has more of a hold over us than we've realized. Risking the unfamiliar, discovering that we need other people, we need help, we need God perhaps. Or even asking this unsettling question. Ready for one more unsettling question? And I'm asking myself this as well. If I'm not the person I've spent years constructing, the image I'm portraying, who am I? Supplementary question. Let me ask you a follow-up question, the same one Jesus asked. Can you see anything? Maybe you've been on this journey, the second half of life, self-awareness, seeing. Can you see anything? Perhaps your honest answer is yes, perhaps it's simply no. Are you beginning to see something of this? Or even are you beginning to want to? Are you thinking, I can see things that I couldn't see before, but some things still look like trees walking in my life? I'm recognizing kind of patterns that I still repeat and some of the rafts that I'm clinging to. I pray perhaps you are on your long way home, waking up to the fact that you're away from home. This is good news, because what's in there is amazing. It's God created. It's Tov. Perhaps you are wanting to see more clearly, and gradually I hope you are discovering that you don't have to find your way home entirely on your own. Help is at hand. Help always is at hand. So why wake up? Why risk seeing if it can be so uncomfortable? It is because, cliche alert, but it happens to be true, Jesus is with us every step of the way. And just as he took the blind man by the hand before the healing came, Jesus does take you, does take me, invites us to take his hand. It is Jesus leading us home, the home we've been longing for, the home that we are homesick for, towards peace, towards freedom, towards our true self, towards God.
Shining in the light of your glory, pour out your power and love as we sing holy, holy, holy. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you high lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing holy, holy, holy. To see you high lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you.
If you would, I'm not on commission for these books, I just happen to believe it with all my heart. If you would like to borrow one, Falling Upward or Breathing Underwater, I've got 2 copies here. If you're one of our visitors who's come because you were down to go to the Big Church Festival and you couldn't, so you've come here, don't worry, take one as a gift and take it with you as well. Can I invite you, if you'd like to read through these words once quietly to yourself, and then if you'd like to, we'll say them to each other. And together we say, with the dog as well, with Diego. May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. And may he bring you home rejoicing once feel free to stay for coffee. And if you'd like to come forward for a very simple anointing, then feel free to do that.